You're watching Capitol Connection from the Illinois State Capitol.
That was Governor Pritzker addressing the debate and infighting around a bill here in the Capitol that would have regulated hemp-derived THC products. Joining us now is the House sponsor for this bill, Representative Cam Buckner. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. So this was so fascinating to me because this bill has been around. We saw it almost get through last spring. It didn't get called for a vote in the House last spring. And then the governor throws his full support behind it just a couple of months ago. And then we get into the negotiations in the House and everything goes crazy. And I'm just curious, can you take us in? There was a long caucus meeting. Can you tell me a little bit about what happened in that caucus meeting? Because afterwards, we heard the governor saying people needed to apologize to the staff members that were in that room.
Yeah, well, I'll say this. I think that we approached this conversation about this piece of policy in a way where we were trying to get folks on all sides of this argument to be balanced in their approach and to have a conversation about how we move forward. I think there was no question whether or not people thought that we should regulate some of these intoxicating products that come from hemp and Delta 8 and all the things that you talked about in your intro. And when you have a complex issue like this that balances public safety and public health, economic benefit, as well as regulatory issues, there's going to be some friction, right? And it should be as part of this process. And so we did have a lengthy caucus of 3.5, 4 hours. I had the pleasure of standing up in front of my colleagues for 3 of those hours, introducing this bill to them in a way where they can understand it. The governor's team was there. I personally asked the governor to send in some folks who can help talk through the nuances of the bill. And he sent 2 folks who did, I think, a fantastic job. They were extremely prepared, they were thorough, and they walked us through the entire thing. But as you know, the process sometimes can get heated, right? And so there were some passionate conversations, there were some robust conversations. I know the speaker took great notes. I took notes of what some of our colleagues were saying. And I think that this is just part of the process. It was par for the course. We've been away from here for a while, so I think this conversation got heightened, but we'll figure this thing out.
So, yeah, and you talked about it being heightened. This turned into conversations about whether the governor and the mayor of Chicago, Brandon Johnson, what their relationship is like, and it turned into conversations about what the relationship between the speaker and the governor is like. And I'm just curious, as you saw this continue to boil over the next few days, what your thoughts were. I mean, are bridges burned? What's the feeling like in the House?
I don't believe so. Listen, I think, Cole, this is what happens when everybody is doing their job. I think the governor is doing his job. I know the legislature is doing our job. I think the mayor of Chicago is doing his job, right? And there are a few different ways to get to whatever the end result is. And I think we're seeing that process play out right now. This is just a part of that. As you know, I'm very close with the governor, the speaker, and the mayor, right? And I think all of them are doing what they think they have to do and need to do for the constituencies that they represent. And I'm proud of that. This is what government looks like in action, right? And so I think we're fine. I think that we will get where we need to go. And these are healthy conversations that will make us all stronger as a party.
So I want to get into the bill itself and why this. You mentioned all of the factors that kind of play into this and how those were all of the ingredients. So this bill would have heavily regulated these intoxicating hemp-derived THC products. These are intoxicating, and they're things you can find in the gas station. There's been examples given of how they're made to look like different snack foods, and they're readily available to children. So that was a lot of the driving force behind this. But you mentioned there's those economic factors. And I've had recently one of your colleagues, Representative LaShawn Ford, on to talk about. We talked a little bit about this issue. And correct me if I'm wrong, the argument is that this market kind of gives that avenue towards success that maybe was promised in the marijuana market, with the dispensary licenses that maybe didn't come to full fruition. Yeah. This is seen as that kind of alternate route. Is that kind of where a lot of this started boiling up?
That is what I'm hearing from some of my colleagues, right? Some of my colleagues are saying this is the avenue for folks who, maybe minorities, folks who don't have the capital or the cash flow to open up a marijuana, a cannabis business based on what we passed 5 years ago now. And here's my deal, right? I want to make sure that we're balancing, once again, public safety, public health, making sure that young people, families are not suffering from the ills of these products. I also want to make sure that businesses in our communities are able to thrive and flourish, right? The law right now, as it stands, has a loophole. And that loophole has been taken advantage of by some businesses doing business the right way, others not doing it the right way. We've got to be able to parse that. We've got to be able to kind of square the circle on that and figure out how, once again, we keep people safe, but we also are not shutting down a majority of businesses in Illinois who are doing this work. And so I believe we all believe in that. I've heard that from Representative Ford, I've heard that from other colleagues. I know that the Speaker and the Governor have all talked about what that balance looks like, and we're going to do this the right way. This is not just about getting it done, it's about getting it right, and I truly believe that we're going to find a way to get there.
In his statement after the fact, after it was clear this bill was not going to get called, the governor said that he would not be beholden to special interests in this group. And in the days since, he's talked about sort of that push from these businesses, from the special interests involved in this. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on that. Was that a huge component of this debate? Was a special interest groups getting involved and kind of trying to put their thumb on the scale in the legislative process?
Listen, I think there are special interests in every single issue that we deal with, and special interest to me is not a bad word. I've got a special interest in the people who I represent. The governor does, the speaker does, all of my colleagues do, right? And so, as we talk through what the process looks like, we should be aware to make sure that we're stepping up for the people who we represent. But I do agree with the governor in the fact that the outside noise cannot be the driving force in this conversation. We have an obligation, I believe, a sacred obligation to do something about this. We're preying, these folks are preying on kids, preying on families, and then they're ingesting things that you don't even know what the ingredients are. You don't know what's in them, right? There's no way that anyone with a sensible logic thinks that this makes sense for the way we should be operating as a state. And so the great thing is that I think we all agree on that, and we'll find a way to get to the next point.
So I want to go back to just the underlying relationships in this entire thing, because you're about to go in. You were just sworn in for another General Assembly, and it's Senate President Don Harmon made a joke about it, that if you listen to the media or financial reports, it's going to be a tough budget year going into it. Is that a tough start? I mean, for this to kind of be the fighting point when you got probably a lot of fights ahead. I mean, this doesn't seem like the ideal starting point for everything for the new year.
Well, Cole, as you know, every session has its own special trademark, right, and special hallmark. This one is different, and it does feel a little different. This is my fourth term now, but I feel like I'm an old timer here. I feel like I've been here for a while. And this is a little different than anything else I've ever started. January is usually pretty calm, and we started January pretty, passionate. I'll call it that. We'll be fine. This is part of the process. When you and I are sitting here again in May having a conversation about the budget and about moving forward on pieces of legislation, this will be way in the rearview mirror. But hopefully before that point, we can find a way to get this bill passed and to bring folks together. Once again, I don't see division or divisiveness or any of that really in this space. I see opportunity for us to figure out how to work together, how to get things done, and we'll do it.
Okay, that's this building. No, I do want to keep talking about the capital city to the Windy City here, that relationship, because if we saw the mayor's team coming down here and lobbying against that bill, we see the next day the governor come out and say, look, they don't have those regular conversations, the mayor and the governor, and he was talking about how it felt like, what that fight was like on that particular bill. Chicago's got a lot of financial problems, just like the state does coming up, and I'm curious what your thoughts are on the way that relationship is, that bridge between the two of them, and what can happen to improve that?
Yeah, well, it needs to strengthen. As you know, my district is completely situated in the city of Chicago. I represent Chicago. I live in Chicago. I'm from Chicago. I'm raising a family there. It's very important to me that Chicago is successful. I do believe that there are some gaps in the relationship, and it needs to improve. Even going a step further, Cole, you know, I ran for mayor of Chicago, and much of my platform was based on creating a symbiotic relationship between City Hall and this building that we're in right now. I still believe that that is a pivotal piece of how to move Chicago forward and how to move the state forward. One cannot go without the other, right? There's a relationship, once again, a symbiosis that has to exist for the city and the state. Hopefully, what we learned this week is that the room for communication is there, that the mayor and the governor can have more robust conversations around strategy and planning and how to be helpful to each other. I hope that that happens. Once again, you know, I'm an ally of the mayor, I'm an ally of the governor, and I'm a leader in the House, right? And then so for me, it's really important that we bridge those gaps and find a way to close those divides so that Chicago can get what it needs and also that the state can get what it needs from Chicago.
All right, well, Representative Cam Buckner, thank you so much for joining me
Thanks,
today.
Cole. Happy New Year.
We'll be right back.